We've got an Atari 800 XL to look at this week. This machine belongs to Martin. He got in touch over on Patreon asking if I'd take a look at it, because every time he turns it on, it seems it just boots into its diagnostic mode. So let's continue our journey into Atari. Let's get this one onto the bench and see if we can't figure out what's wrong with it. Well, this is odd. If we just power things up, it comes up with the self-test screen as you've seen in the intro there. I just recorded that little segment separately. No power LED, although I think Martin told me that he has the keyboard disconnected. There's a ribbon comes up off the board on this right hand side to the keyboard, but it's also doing those buttons and that power LED, so we'll not pay too much attention to that. But if I power cycle after it's been on for a couple of seconds, look at that. That video quality is considerably worse. And the one thing that I've noticed here is that sometimes when you power cycle it, after it's been running for say a minute, well, this time it powered up to more or less a black screen. Sometimes it powers up to a totally black screen. And after another power cycle, there's it back to the self-test screen, although with poor video quality again. So definitely something weird going on in here. Let's get into it and have a look. 6 screws. And this should just lift off. Yep. Because the keyboard ribbon is not connected. That doesn't look straight. I dare say that's been cut by someone, which itself is not uncommon really. Just through age, if this is connected, disconnected, reconnected multiple times, it tends to wear off the traces on the plastic ribbon. So the easiest way to deal with that is just cut a little bit off it. But we'll put that to the side. We have a big RF shield, so we need to get the board out to get that off, because it looks like it's screwed in from below. Here's the thing though, how do you get this out? Because I don't see anything holding it. There's a cover there over the parallel bus, but I can't see that holding it, no. And I don't see any other screws on the bottom. Not unless the screws underneath those, is there? No. I don't think there's anything under that label. How do I get this out of the case? So it seems it's just wedged in place. Get the screwdriver under that corner, that lifts it up. And hopefully I can then wrestle it out. Need to remove these screws then, which hopefully will release all the RF shielding. Then we can start testing things. So just looking over the bottom side here quickly, seems it's a Rev D board. I have no idea, they might all be Rev Ds. Never worked on one before. And it certainly seems that nobody else has ever worked on this one either. All of that looks factory. And on the top side, well, that might be the problem. There is our RAM, and that is all MT branded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 64K of RAM in here total. So presumably 1-bit 64K. Similar RAM to what's used in the C64. And anyone familiar with those machines will tell you that the MT branded stuff of the era, it's not good. So that would be my assumption. How about we power things up like this and see if anything's getting hot, or see if we could see anything on the scope. So let's have a look at the bus, but I want to check it at the CPU, the 6502C, or Sally as it's known on this machine. And I think it's just easier to test it there rather than at the RAM. It's all the same signals, just the address bus and the data bus, but it's all here together on this package. So through the power, and starting with the address bus first, and it's on this bottom side of the chip, running from pin 9 round to pin 25 on this side. There is pin 9, and that looks fine. That is address line A0. A1, that looks okay. Pin 21 on this is just ground, so that's why there's nothing there, but pin 22, that is A12, and that looks fine. So yeah, all of the address bus, that all looks fine. What about the data bus? That comes up next from pins 26 to 33, lines D7 down to D0. So D7, well, yeah, that don't look right. 6, it's just the same. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So yeah, they all look the same and none of them look right. Let's just do a power cycle there. We're on D0. And yeah, okay, it looks right for a split second there. And then it sort of goes to this garbage. And then goes to that garbage. So according to this definition of the self-test system in this machine, I'll link this down below. Just found this from a quick Google search. But if we take a look down this, the mandatory during startup. So during initial power on, the OS will perform the following quick checks. Is it possible to write FF to all RAM locations? Is it possible to write 00 to all RAM locations? And it does a checksum of the two ROMs to compare that to what's stored within each ROM. If any of those tests fail, the OS will transfer control to the self-test memory routine. Here a more thorough test of both RAM and ROM can take place. So that is exactly what we are seeing, isn't it? When the system is first powered on, I go on to one of those data lines. You can see that it definitely is doing something there on the data bus. So it's definitely writing or reading to the RAM, but then it fails and drops into the self-test mode. Now, that's not to say that what we were looking at on the scope there is just it doing that. It might very well have done that and passed that and then doing the checksum on the ROMs here, and it's failing at that point. Nothing here is getting hot. The whole system is more or less stone cold, apart from the CPU itself. There's a little bit of heat in that. A little bit of heat in that ROM chip, but it's absolutely nothing to worry about. I mean, it's just slightly warmer than everything else, but everything else is freezing. But something is definitely trashing that data bus. We don't really have an awful lot to go on here, other than the whole data bus is falling over. So I am of the mind to pull the RAM. Just because this is MT RAM, and just because their 4164s are renowned for failure. Or I wonder, could we try a Piggy back? Maybe that might have some success. I do have replacement 4164s here, but I've only got 7 of them. I'm just going to do this one at a time, just to see if it makes any difference. Because I'm sort of hoping if it is a RAM failure, that it isn't going to be all of them are bad. I sort of hope it might just be one. That's interesting. When I've piggybacked that one, it's not starting up at all. But we've piggybacked that one, and it's gone into the test, and it's getting further. Now, it is running a RAM test. It is coming up with red squares there, so I'm assuming a red is a fail. Let's just leave this for a second. Let's just see what it does. So yeah, if red is a fail, That is some very dead RAM. Not really sure what I'm looking at there. I will have to go and do a bit of reading on that. But just before we do, let's try Piggy back in this bottom one. Let's just see what that does. And now we're just back to that self-test screen. Is that repeatable? Put that back there. Yeah, it is running the RAM test again. Now, the good thing that we've got here is that the first thing it seems to do actually is test the ROMs, and they are coming back as green. Although it's now testing the ROMs again, let's give up testing the RAM. There's it going again now. And no, it's doing the same thing again there. So look, we do have something to go on there though. It certainly is pointing to bad memory. So I tried to look up what that RAM failure screen means, and seemingly it means very little other than you've got bad RAM. From what I've read, it doesn't help you identify what RAM chip is bad. I do find that hard to believe, to be honest, but I suppose considering we had so many red squares on it, well, I think what we'll do is just pull all of this. I have 8 new sockets here, so we'll get all that out, get sockets in, and then we can test these. As per usual, we'll go over all the solder joints first with a bit of fresh solder, just to help things get moving. And then the desoldering station, or the moo gun, it should be able to do the rest for us. Not all of those pins seem to have let go. Sometimes though, if you just grab the chip and give it a wiggle, that can crack them loose, and then it should just come out. There we are. 1 down, no damage, 7 more to go. So this is the order that they were in the board. Let's just start at the top, shall we? We can test them in this thing. 1-bit DRAM tester, very handy tool. Just push the button and wait. 4 green lights, that one's good. As is that one. And that one. That one's good. I'm hoping to find at least one bad. But that one's good as well. Now this one. This is the one, if you remember, when we piggybacked it, the system wouldn't start up at all. It always started just with a black screen. Blue LED. I have no idea what that means, but it's not green, so bad. Let's just reseat that chip. Try it again. And yeah, it doesn't like it. So that one, I assume, is bad. This is the one when we piggybacked it. This is the one that it then started doing the test. Started the ROM and RAM test. But that one is seemingly good. Last one. What's this going to say? Is it only going to be that one bad chip? Nah, seemingly not. This one is at least partly bad. I think when it's half green and half bad like that, that means that half the memory in here is bad. So 32-bit of that is good, be it the upper or the lower 32-bit, I'm not sure. But as far as we're concerned, that one is bad too. So we can just get these back into the board then. And I suppose in some ways, with just 2 chips bad there, it does maybe confirm that that diagnostic screen, which was more or less full of red squares, more or less confirms that that does mean very little, because I can't for the life of me work out how all those squares being red bar 2, which are green, how that correlates to those 6 chips being good and those 2 being bad. But just as well it is just the 2 bad, because as I say, I only have 7 in stock. But we'll put the 6 good ones back in their original location and drop in 2 new ones. All 4164s, although the 2 new chips are slightly different. The originals are all rated at 150 nanosecond. The 2 new ones are 120. I don't think it'll make any difference. Before we test the new RAM, we need to talk about this thing, the power supply. Because while I was researching that diagnostic screen that showed the RAM failure, I noticed an article saying that these power supplies, these like to go bad, sending their 5-volt level high. Now, I did just plow ahead and test it without giving it much thought earlier. I suppose because I'm not used to working on these machines, I'm not familiar with them, and because I know Martin had himself previously tested it, so I had just assumed this was fine. But if there is any chance that the 5-volt level in this has gone high, that certainly would not have helped that RAM. Yeah, the MT RAM is known for failure, but I was getting a high 5-volt level. That is only going to help it towards said failure. So let's test this. It is really straightforward because it is just a 5-volt power supply, despite having 7 pins in the outlet here. These 3 on the left hand side, they are 5-volt. Opposite 3, they are ground. The one in the bottom middle here, it's just connected to the shield. It is running at the minute, so let's just be careful and test it. 5.32 or 0.33. Yeah, that's a little high for my liking. So it feels like one of those bricks in which all the innards are encased in resin and there's no screws on it, with no real means of getting inside. But what I would like to try and do is get inside here, get all those existing innards out and replace them with this. A 5-volt 3-amp power supply, switching power supply at that, so it should be more efficient than the old linear power supply that this is. And I think that we could easily fit that inside this existing housing, assuming that we can get in here. This is rated 5-volt output at 7.5 volt amps. To convert that to amps, take 7.5 divided by 5. You divide volt amps by the volts to get amps. And so this thing is rated at 1.5 amp output. A replacement 3-amp power supply, that will be more than enough. Getting into this though, I'm not sure just how easy that will be. I'm sure it will take some amount of wrestling, because I suspect what you'll find here are posts around this going down into the resin. Well, I suppose the first thing we should do is just cut these wires out, trying to save as much of them as possible. Actually doesn't cut too bad, that stuff. I was expecting it to be a lot stronger, although saying that, it's still going to be a nightmare to get out of this. Well, unfortunately, that is not ever coming out of this case. I have been screwing about with it for longer than I care to admit. Even managed to break the side of this case here. Those bits broke off. But I cannot get this to budge. I think I sort of have it loose on the sides, almost. Even that way as well, it is a little bit loose, or certainly along the top here it is, but it just does not move. I've tried heat, I've tried smacking it. I honestly think the only way you're getting that out is to completely destroy this. So this is for the bin. There's nothing we can do for it. I do have a plan B though, but for that I'm waiting on the postman. In the meantime, I sort of want to know if this works. So how about we use the bench power supply and power it up that way. Now we will be reusing the original cable. So that plugs in there. And then I need to figure out which of these is 5 volt and which is ground. We can do that handily enough with the multimeter. So let's see. The core of this here, it has the white line down it. Well, it's not ground. Is it 5 volt? I can just check that on, say, one of the bits of 7.4 series logic that I see there, for example. 5 volt or VCC is always the last pin on the package. Top left, the way I'm looking at it here. And yeah, that shorts through there, so that one must be 5 volt. We'll just double check that though. Ground. Yeah, that one's ground. So 5 volts, the one with the white line. Solid black one is ground. A horrible mess of wires. We'll hook up the video cable. 5 volt, 1 amp output. Let's see what it does. There it is. Ready. I think that's right. It does boot to a blue screen. We're pulling 0.8 of an amp at our 5 volts. And yeah, it seems to be working. Let's plug in the keyboard. And let's try that again. I've got a power LED. Seems to have booted. And we can type. So yeah, it seems to be good. How about we try and put it into its diagnostic mode? And to do that, I think you hold in Option while you reset. Maybe not. Is it Select? Maybe not. Perhaps I need to do a hard reset. So holding in Select. No, maybe it is Option, is it? Yeah, Option. Okay. We can use the Select key to go through the options in the menu there. Let's just do a full memory test. Now, the video quality there is a bit rough. That is just this thing. The 5 volt that it outputs is a bit noisy, and that's what we're seeing there. But otherwise, this all looks really good. The ROM, they've passed again, and the RAM, well, it's looking good so far. It certainly seems to be doing a very thorough test because it's taking forever. But it's all looking good so far. I believe in this test it does 3 lines of these green dots. Okay, that seems to be it completed. You can see it just restarts the test then. But everything's green, so everything's good. Help takes us back to the menu. Let's try and do an audio visual test. Four voices out of the 800 XL. And they all seem to be good. Final test then we can do is a keyboard test. That key doesn't seem to be working, but the rest of that row does. Shift doesn't seem to work. All those buttons do. Maybe that's shift. Nope, that's not working either. The spacebar seems to work. So 3 keys then. Shift, shift and control. They don't seem to be doing anything. But otherwise it all does seem pretty good. Let's reset back into basic. I don't know if shift changes the keys in any way. Probably changes these ones. No, it is working now. Because there's plus, then holding shift. There's the backslash. Try this key. There's star, holding shift. Yeah, no, that's working okay. I assume I need to hold control to use this as a D-pad. No, that is all working fine. No issues then. Clean bill of health for the keyboard as well. Computer's all back together and I give it a bit of a clean. It has came up really well. But what are we going to do about that power supply? Well, after making a mess of the original one, it got me thinking, could I just 3D print a new housing? So over to Google and search for Atari 800 XL PSU STL file, and sure enough, somebody has beat me to it. I was able to print out this box from a project over on printables.com from a user named Skovic. I'll leave a link to it down below. And while we probably could make this power supply work in here, this project is designed specifically for a Meanwell power supply. That's part of what we were waiting on the postman for, but this arrived today. It is a Meanwell RS15-5, 5 volt, 3 amp PSU again, but it has mounting points here that line up with those mounting points on this project. So it just made sense to get the power supply that was intended for this. It's not particularly expensive. I think it was about £10. But big cutout here as well, and that's intended for this. We can plug in our own kettle lead, making this a completely self-contained unit. And it even has a power switch plus space for a fuse. Yeah, okay, in the UK here all our plugs are fused anyway, but a lot of those kettle leads just have 13 amp fuses in them. At least with this I can fuse that down to say 3 amp. I'll just provide some protection for the Atari itself. So I need to put all this together. I have a couple of screws to hold the case together. These 2 little screws should hold the power supply in here. In fact, just let me try and mount that now while we're talking about it. And yeah, my printer needs a new bed. It's sort of making a mess of the first layer of prints. The bed has a nasty scrape in it. I'm going to have to get a new one. Just leaving these lines in it. You can see it more prevalent on the top piece there. It'll be fine for me though. That goes into that cutout. Although I think what I need to do is remove these clips here off this switch, because this file has those clips in it there that will go into those positions just to hold everything together. So yeah, just a matter of doing that, putting it all together, wiring it up. I'll come back when I've got it done. So that's it assembled, all the wiring done. Just stripped the wires that I needed out of another kettle lead, actually, of any amount of these. So it should all be more than heavy enough. We are reusing the old DC cable going down to the Atari. I did have to extend the wires coming off it though, because I want to keep the old cable restraint here. There is a cutout in this for it, so just joined them, soldered it, bit of heat shrink, it'll be fine. Before we do close it up though, I need to check what this is outputting. There's a little trim pot just in there. Just want to make sure that it's 5 volt or as close to it as we can get. So that goes in there and that should turn it on. These two here are the output, and it is 5 volts, or just slightly over. Let me see if I can turn it down a little bit. There, that's perfect. Bang on 5 volts. So just time to close it up. The fuse that this takes, by the way, isn't a standard plug fuse. Rather, it's one of these type of fuses, just slightly smaller. The only ones I have are these 2 amp time delay fuses. It'll be fine for what we're doing here. And there we are. Got these black screws to put on it. And that's it. Or maybe actually just to finish it, I've got a couple of feet, just so it doesn't scratch up whatever surface it's sitting on. I'll just position these out of the way of the screws. Not even remotely square, but it'll do. One new power supply. So let's just give it one final test. Power supply on. Atari on. Starting up. Is that normal? Could anyone confirm that to me? Is it meant to make that weird noise as it's starting? Because otherwise it does seem to work. I was just about to say. Why is the keyboard not working? And with no power LED. Let's try and boot it to its diagnostic. Go to a keyboard test. And yeah, that's not working. Hopefully it's just a loose connection on that keyboard port. Give me a second to take it apart again. So yeah, this was loose. I think the problem is that the strengthener on it has been cut shorter than the actual ribbon itself. So when you try to put this in, this pops out again. It's not really getting a great connection. Ultimately, I think what it needs is a new membrane. So I'll have to keep an eye out for one of those. In the meantime though, just let me see if I can reseat this, see if that fixes the problem. Nope, it just keeps falling out. I think what I'll have to do is run the scissors along that. It's going to make it shorter, it's going to make it even more awkward. But I don't really see any other option. I assume this bit is meant to go down in there with that bit. That's what keeps the tension on this when it's in place. Or in fact, you know what? I'm an idiot. That bit isn't meant to go down in with it. That there doesn't go down in with it. Oh, you silly boy. It connects like this, and the pins are on the left-hand side of the socket there. So if that bit of plastic was in front of that ribbon, yeah, it could never work, could it? We do have a straighter line on that now, so maybe that'll help it get a better connection. No, it's now too short. It is now too short to reach. Anybody know where I can get a ribbon cable from? And I have stupidly cut it straight there, haven't I? But that is meant to be cut at an angle because of the angle the keyboard sits at. Oh well, that was a silly thing to do. I've got it wedged in there as best I can. If we power up like that, LED's back. And the keyboard works again. Yeah, need to get a new ribbon. Well, I'm sorry to end this video on that down note. We did have a fully working Atari 800 XL there for the briefest of moments, although now it needs a new keyboard membrane. I'll get one of those ordered up and we'll get it fitted, returning this thing to full working order. But let's try and stay positive. We've sorted the RAM issue and we've built a new PSU. All of that together should keep this machine running for the foreseeable. And yes, this machine is now staying with us because Martin has very, very kindly donated it to the channel. And I could not be more excited because I have thoroughly enjoyed working on this machine. I am super impressed with it. The build quality of it is fantastic, and I can't wait to dig into it in a bit more detail. We need to get some sort of cartridge that I can run games from, or software from. So I'll need to have a think about what we could do there. I have seen a Pico based cart, or there are a couple of slightly older SD cart loaders. Let me know what you think would be the best solution. And is there anything that we could get to plug into the back of this? A couple of expansion ports there. Might be nice to try and get one of the original disk drives. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed our journey with the Atari 800 XL, although that journey is not over yet. If you want to see any other Atari based content this month, just search for the hashtag FebTari. There are a few other YouTubers jumping on that with a few other fantastic videos already released, so why not check out some of those. But if you enjoyed this one, I would appreciate a thumbs up, all the usual YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.